Little girls accidentally contact a millionaire CEO. After Mum collapses, his response will melt your heart. The afternoon sun spilled through the small apartment window, painting the walls in a soft golden hue. Sophie sat cross-legged on the carpet, carefully brushing her doll's tangled hair with an old plastic comb. Beside her, Lily giggled as she made her doll talk in a squeaky, high-pitched voice. Their innocent laughter bounced off the faded walls, filling the home with warmth. In the kitchen, Anna hummed softly, stirring a pot on the stove while the smell of onions and bread drifted into the room. For the little family, it felt like any other ordinary day. Sophie glanced up at her mother, smiling, while Lily tugged her sister's sleeve and whispered if cookies would come after lunch. Sophie teased her, saying only if she ate all her vegetables first, and the girls burst into another round of giggles. Anna smiled at them, her heart swelling with love, but suddenly her smile faltered as dizziness swept over her like a wave. She gripped the counter for balance, her chest tightening painfully. She tried to call their names, but her voice cracked and faded. The knife slipped from her hand, clattering onto the floor, making both girls freeze in alarm. "Mommy?" Sophie called, her voice trembling with unease. Anna staggered, her knees weakening, and gasped as the pain deepened in her chest. Lily's eyes widened in terror as she saw her mother stumble. Before they could reach her, Anna collapsed onto the floor with a heavy thud. Sophie's doll fell from her hand, forgotten, as her heart raced in panic. Lily dropped to her knees beside their mother, her small hands shaking as she clutched her arm. "Mummy, wake up! Please wake up!" she cried, her tears falling fast. Anna's eyes were closed, her breathing faint and shallow, her stillness terrifying. Sophie's body shook, fear rising like a storm, but she knew she had to be brave. "Don't cry, Lily, we have to help her," she whispered, though her own voice broke. Lily sobbed harder, clinging to her sister's arm, her tiny body trembling. Sophie's eyes darted around the room, desperate for an answer, until she saw the phone on the counter. Forcing her weak legs to move, she grabbed it, her small hands trembling so hard she almost dropped it. The screen lit up in her face, showing rows of names and numbers she barely understood. "What do we do?" Lily asked through her tears, and Sophie's breath shook as she replied, We need help." She scrolled clumsily, her thumb sliding over the glowing screen, her tears making the words blur. Her eyes landed on a contact named Mr. Daniel. She didn't know who it was, but her chest ached with urgency. Maybe he can help," she whispered, more to herself than to Lily. Without thinking further, she pressed the number. The ringing sound filled the silent apartment, each tone stretching endlessly. Sophie bit her lip until it hurt, praying someone would answer. Lily clutched her doll tightly, whispering desperate words under her breath. The phone rang and rang, Sophie's hope fading with every second. She almost ended the call, terrified she'd done something wrong, but then a click sounded. Someone had answered. Sophie's throat closed up, her words stuck between fear and desperation. She looked at her unconscious mother lying on the floor, and her lips quivered. "Hello? Please, you have to help us," she whispered, her small voice breaking. Lily tugged at her sleeve and urged her, "Tell them Mommy's not waking up." Sophie swallowed hard, tears spilling down her cheeks as she cried into the phone, "Our Mommy fell down. She won't wake up." Her chest heaved as she tried not to collapse herself. She didn't know who she was speaking to, or if they would even understand, but she clung to the sound of the line like a lifeline. "Please, someone, help," she whispered again, almost breaking into sobs. Lily knelt beside Anna, patting her mother's hand as if her touch could bring her back. "Mommy, don't leave us," she whispered in a trembling voice. Sophie turned her head, unable to watch her mother's stillness any longer, and shut her eyes tightly. Her small hand gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. "I don't know who you are," she whispered through tears, "but please, we need you." The silence stretched unbearably, broken only by Lily's fragile sobs and Sophie's unsteady breathing. Hope and fear clashed inside her chest, but she refused to let go of the phone. In that single trembling plea, a desperate cry for help escaped the lips of a child, echoing into the world and reaching a stranger she had never meant to call. Far across the city, in a tall glass tower that glittered beneath the afternoon sun, Daniel Carter sat in his sleek office, a man known for his sharp mind and wealth that touched every corner of the business world. Papers lay neatly stacked across his mahogany desk, and a digital screen displayed the details of a contract worth millions, yet his eyes were heavy with the weariness of endless responsibility. Assistants moved quietly outside his door, careful not to disturb their CEO, while he signed documents that could alter the future of his empire. For Daniel, days blurred together in a cycle of meetings, phone calls, and decisions that left no space for anything beyond business. His phone, resting face down beside his fountain pen, buzzed once, then twice, vibrating against the polished wood. He frowned, glancing at the name that flashed across the screen, an unfamiliar number. Normally, he would let it pass, as he rarely entertained unknown calls. Yet when the buzzing continued, insistent and unrelenting, something inside him stirred. He picked it up with a sigh, his voice calm and professional, but what came through the receiver was no thing he could have expected. "Please, our mummy fell down. We don't know what to do." The voice was tiny, trembling, fragile, like glass about to break. Daniel's pen slipped from his hand, rolling silently across the desk as his pulse quickened. He leaned forward, gripping the phone tighter, his mind racing to comprehend what he had just heard. These were not the words of a secretary or a business partner. This was a child, frightened and desperate, reaching out to him by mistake. His chest tightened as he listened to the sobs in the background, another smaller voice crying softly, the sound piercing through the steel walls of his guarded heart. For a moment, the empire around him disappeared. Contracts, meetings, and wealth felt meaningless compared to the raw fear in that child's voice. "Stay calm," he said gently, surprising himself with how soft his tone became, a sharp contrast to the commanding voice he used in boardrooms. "Tell me your address, sweetheart. I'm coming right now." He grabbed a pen, scribbling down the shaky words of a child reciting a street name between sobs, each syllable heavy with urgency. His assistant knocked lightly on the door, reminding him of the investors waiting in the conference room, but Daniel didn't even respond. He shoved back his chair, standing abruptly, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. The assistant peeked in, startled at the sight of her usually composed boss with fire in his eyes. "Cancel the meeting," he ordered firmly, already striding toward the elevator. She tried to protest, stammering about contracts and deadlines, but he cut her off with a wave of his hand. "This is more important." His phone stayed pressed to his ear as he moved swiftly, listening to the muffled cries on the other end. "It's okay," he assured the little voice, his words steady, though his heart was pounding. "I'm on my way. Don't hang up. I won't leave you alone." The elevator doors slid shut, his reflection staring back at him, but for once he didn't see the powerful CEO. He saw a man who had been chosen, by accident or fate, to answer a call for help. As the numbers descended floor by floor, he thought of the children, strangers to him, yet now bound to him by desperation. He stepped out into the bustling lobby, ignoring the curious stares of employees as he pushed through the revolving doors. The city roared with life outside, but Daniel's world had narrowed to a single mission, reaching those little voices before it was too late. Daniel rushed into the street, his polished shoes pounding against the pavement as he flagged down his driver, ordering him to start the car immediately. The engine roared to life, and the sleek black vehicle surged forward into the chaos of the city, but almost instantly they were swallowed by traffic. Horns blared, cars crawled bumper to bumper, and the frustration of drivers only deepened the gridlock. Daniel gritted his teeth, tapping his fingers anxiously against the seat, his usual composure gone. Every red light felt like a dagger piercing through time, each second dragging while two little girls sat helpless with their unconscious mother. He leaned forward, urging the driver to take side streets, to cut through alleys, anything that would move them faster. His chest tightened with a strange pressure he had never felt before, not in business, not in wealth. This was fear, raw and unfamiliar, a fear of arriving too late. His phone remained open, the faint sound of muffled crying still on the line, anchoring him to the urgency of the moment. "We're close, just hold on," he muttered, though the children couldn't hear him. He glanced out the window, the blur of buildings passing like shadows, but all he could picture was a tiny hand clutching a phone, trembling with hope that someone would come. His wealth, his empire, the skyscraper he had just left behind, none of it meant anything now. What use was power if he couldn't save the fragile Lipal, Vez, depending on him? His mind, usually sharp with numbers and strategies, was now consumed with a single prayer. Let me reach them in time. Meanwhile, inside the small apartment, Sophie sat on the floor, her arms wrapped tightly around Lily, trying to shield her from the terrifying stillness of their mother. Lily's tears soaked her sister's shirt as she buried her face against her, whispering, "I'm scared." Sophie stroked her sister's hair, though her own tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Help is coming. I promise." She had no idea who the man on the phone was, only that he had said he was on his way, and that tiny thread of hope was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. The minutes dragged endlessly, the ticking clock on the wall amplifying every second they sat waiting. The room felt heavy, the air too thick, the silence broken only by the faint sound of their mother's shallow breathing. Sophie pressed her cheek against Lily's head, whispering again and again, "He's coming. Someone's coming." Back in the car, Daniel's driver swerved sharply onto a side street, tires screeching as they cut through the back roads of the city. Sweat prickled Daniel's brow, his hands gripping the seat as if he could pull the car forward with his own strength. "Faster!" he urged, his voice low but urgent. The driver nodded, pushing the engine harder, weaving through the traffic like a man possessed. Daniel's heart raced in rhythm with the spinning wheels, every block they passed bringing him closer, yet not close enough. The sound of Lily's faint sobs still lingered in his ears, playing over and over, a haunting reminder of the stakes. He had closed billion-dollar deals with nerves of steel, but never had his body trembled the way it did now. For the first time, he realized how powerless money could be in the face of human need. Every delay felt like failure, every honking horn like a cruel reminder of the fragility of time. He clenched his jaw, silently vowing that he would not let these children down, not tonight, not ever. And as the city lights blurred past, Daniel Carter, a man of power and fortune, sat in the back of a speeding car, carrying with him the weight of two little hearts that were counting on him to arrive before it was too late. The car screeched to a halt outside a modest apartment building, its worn bricks and cracked steps standing in stark contrast to the polished life Daniel usually knew. He didn't wait for the driver to open the door. He leapt out, his long strides carrying him across the uneven pavement as if the ground itself might swallow precious seconds. Clutching the phone tightly, he found the apartment number and hurried up the dim stairwell, his chest burning with anticipation. He reached the door, his knuckles poised to knock, but it swung open before he could, revealing two wide-eyed girls, their faces streaked with tears. They froze, staring up at the tall figure in a tailored suit, the last person they had expected to see. Sophie's lips trembled, but something in the man's eyes, an unspoken gentleness, kept her from running. Daniel crouched low, lowering himself to their level, his voice soft yet steady. "It's okay. I'm here now." His hand hovered near the frame, careful not to frighten them. He peered past the girls and saw their mother lying motionless on the floor. His throat tightened, but he forced calm into his voice as he pulled his phone back out. Within seconds he had dialed emergency services, his tone firm and commanding as he relayed the details, his businesslike precision now serving a far greater purpose. "Ambulance. Apartment 2B. Female unconscious. Send help immediately." Hanging up, He turned back to the girls, who stood clutching each other's hands like lifelines. "Don't worry," he said again, softer this time. "Help is on the way." He slipped off his jacket, the fine fabric whispering against his shirt, and gently laid it over Anna's still body to keep her warm. The girls watched him with a mix of fear and awe, their small bodies trembling as if the weight of the world had fallen on their shoulders. Daniel lowered himself onto the floor beside them, not caring about his immaculate suit brushing against the dusty carpet. Lily reached out timidly, her tiny hand shaking, and without hesitation, Daniel offered his own, wrapping her trembling fingers in his steady grasp. "Shh," he soothed, his deep voice like a lullaby in the heavy silence. "You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." Sophie, though older, fought to hold back tears, her eyes wide as she studied the stranger who had appeared like a guardian out of nowhere. Daniel glanced between them, recognizing the fear written in every line of their small faces, and he softened even more, speaking gently as though every word might patch a crack in their breaking hearts. The girls didn't see a CEO in that moment. They didn't know his power or his wealth. All they saw was a man who had come when no one else had, who knelt beside them in their darkest hour, offering his presence as their shield. And as the seconds ticked by in that fragile room, Daniel Carter, once a figure of prestige and distance, became something else entirely. A protector whose very presence promised that they were no longer alone. The shrill wail of the ambulance siren filled the night as paramedics hurried Anna onto a stretcher, their movements brisk and precise, while Daniel stayed close, his steady presence keeping the frightened girls from unraveling completely. He guided Sophie and Lily into the back seat of his car, following closely behind the ambulance, his gaze flicking to them every few seconds, his heart twisting at the sight of their tear-streaked faces. At the hospital, the bright lights and antiseptic smell seemed overwhelming for the little ones, but Daniel knelt beside them, promising in a calm voice that their mother was in good hands. Nurses hurried past, voices sharp with urgency, and the girls clung to him instinctively as though he were the only anchor in a storm. Hours stretched like days as Anna was wheeled into the emergency ward, the doors swinging shut, leaving Daniel alone with two children who barely knew him, but trusted him all the same. He led them to a waiting area, bought them sandwiches and juice from a nearby vending machine, and sat patiently while they ate in silence, too drained to speak. When Lily's tears started again, he pulled out a handkerchief, gently wiping her cheeks, whispering that everything would be all right. Sophie leaned against his arm, trying to stay strong for her sister, but exhaustion soon overtook her, and her eyelids grew heavy. Daniel adjusted his seat, letting her rest her head against his shoulder, while Lily curled into his lap, their tiny breaths warm against him. He wrapped his arms protectively around them, feeling the fragile weight of responsibility settle over him in a way that was unfamiliar, yet deeply human. Time crept by, the ticking of the hospital clock echoing in the sterile hall, but Daniel didn't move, afraid to disturb the small comfort the girls had found. At last, after what felt like an eternity, a nurse approached Wibalu, with a gentle smile announcing that Anna had regained consciousness. Relief surged through him, and he rose carefully, carrying the sleeping Lily while guiding Sophie, still drowsy, by the hand. They entered the room quietly, the fluorescent light casting a pale glow over Anna's tired but alive face. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy with tears, and the first thing she saw was her daughters safe and nestled in the arms of a man she did not know. Emotion choked her throat as gratitude and disbelief flooded her heart. "Why?" she whispered hoarsely, her voice weak but filled with wonder. "Why would a man like you do this for us?" Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft, his lips curving into a gentle smile that carried more weight than words ever could. He adjusted Lily gently in his arms, brushing a strand of hair from her sleeping face, and then turned back to Anna. "Because sometimes," he said quietly, each word steady, "life gives us a chance to do what really matters." The room seemed to still, as though even the hum of the machines had paused to let the truth of his words settle. Anna's tears slipped silently down her cheeks, her heart swelling with a gratitude so fierce it left her trembling. And as she watched her daughters sleeping peacefully against this stranger, she realized he was no stranger at all. He had become the protector she had prayed for in silence, the kindness she never expected to find. The days that followed unfolded like a quiet miracle, each moment weaving Daniel deeper into the small family's life, not as a visitor, but as a presence they began to depend on. He returned to the hospital often, his tall figure slipping into the ward with a warmth that immediately softened the room, carrying little gifts for the girls and books for Anna to read during her recovery. Sophie would light up the moment she saw him, her usual shyness replaced with laughter as she rushed to show him her drawings, while Lily clung to his hand as though she had known him forever. When Anna was finally discharged, Daniel drove them home himself, insisting on carrying her bags, making sure she didn't overexert herself. The apartment, once filled with the echo of fear, now seemed to hold a new kind of peace whenever he walked through the door. He checked in regularly, sometimes bringing groceries, other times simply sitting at the small table and helping the girls with their homework. Sophie would frown in concentration as he explained her math problems with surprising patience, and Lily would giggle as he listened to her halting attempts at reading aloud, applauding her every effort as though it were a grand performance. Anna, though still fragile, found herself smiling more than she had in years, watching her daughters flourish under the kindness of a man who owed them nothing but gave them everything. Neighbors began to notice the changes too, whispering in surprise when the well-dressed CEO was seen carrying groceries up the stairs of a modest apartment or kneeling in the courtyard to push Lily on the swing. Yet Daniel never cared for their stares. In those moments, he wasn't a millionaire or a businessman. He was simply someone who had found meaning where he least expected it. The bond between them grew steadily, not forced but natural, like roots intertwining quietly beneath the soil. Sophie and Lily began to wait for him eagerly, racing to the door when his knock echoed through the hallway, their giggles filling the space before he even stepped inside. Anna, once hesitant to accept help, realized that his presence was not charity, but a gift, one born from genuine care rather than duty. Over time, Daniel discovered a part of himself he thought had long been buried, a tenderness, a joy in the simplicity of being needed not for his power, but for his heart. And so, the accidental call that began with panic and fear became the very thread that stitched together a new story for them all. Sophie and Lily would carry that day in their memories forever, not as the day their mother fell, but as the day an angel in human form walked into their lives. And for Daniel, it became the proof that true wealth was never counted in contracts or accounts, but in the quiet moments of love, kindness, and the lives we choose to touch.